This is all it takes for a miss on steel. What's going on, guys? All right, so I figured I'd kind of throw a little video in here real quick for you guys to talk a little bit about the breakthroughs that I had at practice about steel. It's pretty simple. It's the key to success on steel has and always will be for me, trigger prep. It's always trigger prep. So I want to talk a little bit about why it's not just as simple as trigger prep, right? Because if it was that simple, because I always trigger prep, and I'm sure you guys see videos of me pulling the trigger as I'm coming through a wall or through a barrel or things like that. I will definitely have zero problem sending it around through a wall because I'm trigger prepping hard. Obviously, I don't do it on purpose, but I'm 100% about trigger prep. Here's the thing that I've changed in practice, I guess I'll call it. Yeah, because that's exactly when it happened. It's the things I changed were in practice. So I'm going through, I brought 400 rounds for the day because sometimes I will bring 1,000 rounds and I will waste 400 or 500 rounds at the beginning of practice just getting warmed up, it feels like. So I wanted to bring a little bit less rounds and shoot 400 rounds that day, which was, yesterday. And I wanted to really kind of focus on those 400 rounds and not allow myself to really need a warm up. So I will say that I was struggling a little bit on steel, and I got to the last, I think it was the last 100 rounds, okay? And I found it out. I figured it out. I figured out what I did wrong during those 300 rounds when I would miss steel. Now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't like just sending rounds and missing a bunch of steel, but I would still miss steel. I was still missing. And the goal is always to fight for perfection. Even if you can't get it, you should always be fighting for perfection. So if you're 5 runs and you miss 2 or 3 pieces of steel and you have makeups on those 2 or 3 pieces of steel, I mean, that's a 1.5 seconds or 3/4 of a second right there. So right there, I lost 3/4 of a second in a single stage. Pretty simple, right? That's kind of the way I look at it. I'm losing time every single time I miss. It's not the miss that I care about. It's the time that I lost because of the miss, right? Because I can make that shot up, right? I have no problem with that. It's that I don't want to have to make it up. That's been killing me lately in my matches. It's been significant issues for me in my last couple matches. Area 4 was much better, but still a little bit off. Didn't get them all every time. So some stages I crushed it, some stages I would just have a couple of makeups and it was just not necessary, right? Just dumb mistakes. So as I go into, as I come back from area 4, I hit this practice and realized that the problem is the trigger prep. And it's not that I didn't trigger prep, because I was, it's that I'm not thinking about the trigger. So one thing for me that is different than probably most other shooters is I think a lot while I'm shooting. Like I think about a lot of things while I'm shooting, but they're in little compartments, right? So the first thing I think of is draw. The second thing I think of is trigger prep. My grip, all these different things go through my mind during the stage. And if I don't do those things, I suffer. Like my shooting really suffers. Good example is during the practices, the trigger prep. I started thinking less about aiming the gun, because guess what, guys? You already know how to aim the gun. You know that the red thing needs to land on the white thing and you need to pull the trigger. It's that simple. I also know that when I'm shooting that I'm supposed to grip the gun, right? So if I don't think about gripping the gun sometimes, I won't. I just don't do it. So I think about the things that I can control, okay? I don't think about the things downrange. I know this is gonna sound weird to some of you because I know you guys are so obsessed with those targets downrange. I don't think about targets. I think about the execution of the things that I can control. I can't control my accuracy down by the target. I control my accuracy and my speed inside those fault lines, inside this body. So when I focus and I am at my best, I'm focusing on the small details of me, such as my grip, the trigger prep. And what I mean by trigger prep is that I'm thinking, and actually my brain is thinking about the trigger, right? I'm not thinking about like the aiming, because I already know how to do that. I'm thinking about the feel of the trigger, like all the way to the wall. And then as soon as I see it pull, and all those different things that I do that I'm successful at is because I think about them. And yes, I understand there are your shooting gurus out there that tell you to, you know, not think while you're shooting, but that doesn't work for me, because if I don't think, I lose a lot of time. I have a lot of mistakes, because you have to control when you pull the trigger in this sport. And steel is the #1 thing that can make up time or lose you a ton of time in this sport. It's one of the hardest parts of our sport, and that's why I love steel so much, because it is the challenge. If we take steel out of this sport, it changes it completely. So again, focus on the things that you control, and you'll see a big difference. So I'm gonna post up a little video. I don't know whether I'm gonna do it before or after, inside this video, to kind of show you the difference between a truly trigger prep gun and a non-trigger prep gun. Because for me, yesterday, I caught myself trigger prepping the gun, but I wasn't fully engaged on the wall. I was just partially there. And the reason why is because I didn't want to over prep the gun. But a little secret about me, guys, is I don't mind being overly aggressive on the trigger prep. As long as I'm safe, my gun's pointed in the right direction, which obviously it is, because I don't put my finger on the trigger until I'm engaging a target anyway. So I focus so much on that trigger prep that I don't mind if I send one early, right? You'll see me entering on targets. Sometimes I'll send one early. Sometimes it's on purpose, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just me prepping the trigger really hard. It's safe, guys. Don't be afraid to prep your trigger and send one down range into that target early, because you never know, it might hit it. The whole point is try to get it early as you can, right? Get it early as you can. So have that control, be focused on trigger prep. And I want to pull the trigger when I want to pull the trigger. That's why trigger prep to me is so important. So that is the secret sauce that I found I guess yesterday at the practice a lot of you guys asked about. So, all right, if you have any questions, hit me up in those comments and I'll see you on the range. The difference between a hit and a miss on steel can be as simple as just this little movement right here. So if you have your gun in your hand and you're pointing at steel and you have the gun prepped, or what you think is prepped, but you still have a lot more to go, that little wiggle is all it takes for a miss on steel, versus the full pull, anything outside of that. So if you watch as I hold the gun, so that's all the play before the wall. Once I get to the wall, I still have a little bit more to pull, and there's the click. So again, not much with this pistol, but that little bit is all it takes for a miss on steel.